Thank you for watching another episode of the CEO Barbecue. My name is Antonio, and this time we'll be looking for high-grade gold, silver, copper, and potentially zinc in southeastern Arizona, where I will be joined by Ken Enquist, the CEO of Intrepid Metals. No interview before. I've warned you, though, that although this company has not paid me to conduct this interview, you should understand that this channel is a business that makes money from producing and publishing content in various forms, which means that at a certain point in the future, this company might become a client and compensate us for content production, which means that you can never rely on any of these videos for research, and you should treat this as entertainment instead. You should also be aware of the fact that the mineral exploration, development, and mining industry is a very, very tough business to deploy capital in. Losing money is the norm and should be the expectation in this sector, as this is a very complex sector, and the performance of individual companies typically depends on many different moving particles, including geopolitics or macroeconomics, commodity prices, management execution, and many, many, many more factors that maybe you don't fully understand. I certainly don't fully understand all of the factors. Moreover, these companies are typically in the pre-revenue stage, which means they don't have sales, they don't have money coming in, and that means they rely on the public markets for financing of their operations. As a general rule of thumb, you're better off understanding that most company communications, albeit this interview or their website, it could be their presentation, definitely their social media accounts, and everything that these companies do is intended as marketing. And although I don't make buy or sell recommendations because there is a clear conflict of interest given the nature of my business, many out there do. And you should be aware of that inherent bias. That bias won't always be clearly disclosed with everyone out there, albeit on Twitter, LinkedIn, albeit on mainstream media, albeit on a website, wherever it might be. It is safer for you anytime you're watching and consuming any type of company specific content to approach it with a dose of skepticism and assume that the party telling you about it is biased in some form of way, because there will always be a bias, again, albeit disclosed or not. The fact that I have no idea what I'm doing should already be clear to you at this point. I don't have a long enough track record of consistent investment profits, so I should, under no circumstances, be considered an authority on anything. Although this might sound amusing to you, it is not intended as a joke. I am not pretending to be humble. I am not making a joke. I'm pointing out a fact and warning you not to rely on anything I do or say or anything that is done or said in this content, this video. Fortunately, at least to my understanding, nobody out there has any special abilities. The guest who is here likely as part of their marketing campaign does not possess any superior knowledge, and they cannot know what's going to happen in the future. They don't know what will go up, what will go down, or what's going to go in circles. Nobody out there does. None of us know whether any of the company's activities will result in a success, again, given that we're talking about high risk, early stage activities. Oh, so unfortunately, try as I may, I won't always catch all red flags or all challenges with the company. So even if I end up asking a few tough questions, don't let that fool you. Don't rely on this being all of the tough questions. Again, these are complicated startups with many moving parts, and I don't understand everything. So I cannot guarantee the quality of anything presented in this video. This is all to say that you shouldn't blindly trust me or anybody on the internet, and you should do your own research. Charlie Munger actually has a great quote. He's got many great quotes, but there's one very fitting to speculating in junior mining startups, and that is that if you don't understand it, you shouldn't do it. I understand this is a long disclaimer, but it is an important warning. It is important for you to understand everything because no guarantees can be made about future events. And of course, past performance is not a guarantee of future results. What you will find a lot of in this video, though, are forward-looking statements. Pause the screen and read the warning that you see on your screen right now in order to better understand what those are. This is a conversation that is general and impersonal in nature, containing hopes for future events that may or may not take place, again, depending on many different factors. Before continuing on, please talk to a professional licensed investment advisor with a good long-term track record, as well as do more actual research before taking any decisions. You don't do research on YouTube or social media or investment blogs. You do research on setterplus.ca, where you will find the company's official filings. If you don't do that, you are highly likely to lose your money. If you didn't have enough time to read the disclaimers shown on the screen as I was talking, or if you don't understand them, you should not be consuming this content because you might be putting your capital at risk. With all that made clear, I can actually kick off this interview with Ken Enquist, the CEO of Intrepid Metals. This company is listed as INTR, so that's INTR on the TSX Ventures Exchange in Canada, where an average of about 37,000 shares trade daily. The 52-week high is 94 cents and the 52-week low is 34 cents at the time of recording of this conversation. With a market cap of about $17.5 million and about 47.5 million shares outstanding, today this is a 37-cent stock. 19.8 million warrants and 4 million options brings us to over 71 million fully diluted shares, meaning an increase of 50% in shares outstanding can be expected if all of those options and warrants get exercised, which would then also result in about a 30% ownership dilution to current shareholders. Again, if, and that's always a big if, but if those warrants and options get exercised. Insiders here own almost 9%, 8.8% to be specific, of the shares outstanding, and almost 60% of all the shares outstanding are held by institutions and high net worth individuals, which leaves us with an estimated 32% in the hands of retail investors. The last officially filed financial statement, which is dated September 30, shows me $2.4 million in current assets, most of which at the time was in cash, with specifically $2.1 million on the books. Current liabilities at the end of September sat at about a third of $1,000,000, mostly in account payables and accrued liabilities, as well as a small portion of a promissory note payable. That same financial statement also tells me that on average, over the last reported 9 months, Inter recorded $5, they wish it was $5 million in operating expenses, where about $1.7 million was not exploration and evaluation related. This would normally place you at an average G&A of rounded up about $200,000, but that $1.7 million also contains a non-cash expense equal to $511,000, specifically in the form of share-based payments, meaning the cash component of the G&A was an average of $140,000 per month. Note 12 in the financials provides the breakdown of what that is, where we see that over 21% went into marketing and investor relations. So that's an average of about 30 grand a month. And the majority of the rest, being 60% of the overall G&A, went into various forms of compensation, including consulting, professional fees, and salaries and benefits, with the remaining 20% accounted for office, travel, software, computers, regulatory expenses, and so on. On the exploration and evaluation side of the business, the total cost for the 9-month period was $3.3 million. That's an average of over $360,000 a month. And it is note 7 that provides the breakdown, where we see that over 72% of that spend actually went into the ground in the form of drilling, with geologist fees and rental making up a big chunk of the rest of the expense, and of course, various smaller expenses on top of that. I have 2 ratios here to summarize those financials. The first one I call the exploration to administration ratio, which sits at about 2.6 to 1 for Intrepid, meaning, again, over 72% of the overall spend went to exploration and evaluation. And the second ratio is the drilling to marketing ratio, where I'm looking for, is this actually an exploration company or is it a marketing company? This one sits at almost 9, or 8.77 to be specific. As always, though, I would like to remind everyone that this financial statement is nothing more than a snapshot in time. In this case, it is specifically at the end of September of this year, which is almost 3 months ago. So the finances will have changed by the time you're watching this, because this is a non-revenue generating company that uses its treasury to finance operations. And they also have option payments and work commitments on its exploration properties and so on and so forth, which will hopefully become clear later on in the conversation. But obviously, I'm not infallible, unfortunately, and I'm no stranger to mistakes. I do make mistakes in my reading and understanding of company financials. So to be safe, you should head over to setterplus.ca to look at all the numbers yourself and make sure you're getting the full picture. For Intrepid, that full picture is focused fully on the US and specifically Arizona, where the presentation says that they have 3 projects. They call them district scale projects, which is one of my favorite claims, which we will get to later on. They're focused on copper, silver, and zinc. There's just a little bit of, well, not a little bit, there's gold in some of those intercepts from their phase 1 drill program at one of the projects. That's something we'll talk about as well, but plenty really to talk about here. Ken, this is your first time on the CEO barbecue, so I want to talk about you first. Who are you, and why would I want to trust you with my money?
Okay. So you wanted a little bit of background on me as well? Okay.
I want you
So
to convince me that I should trust you with my money, essentially.
okay. I'll do my best. Well, let's step back a little bit with my background. I've been in the junior sector for about 10 years. Before that, I was with Rio Tinto for about that period of time, as well as with AngloGold Ashanti. So I was doing large project development, or project development on large projects for those kind of companies. So I've worked in some major scale projects through feasibility, pre-feasibility engineering, all the way through construction, startup, and operations for Rio specifically, and also AngloGold Ashanti, and on projects like Oyu Tolgoi's underground, Kennecot's pebble crushing circuit at their Copperton concentrator. I also worked at their smelter early on in my career. And I worked in pretty much the entire value stream at Kennecott, Utah Copper, but also had participated and helped out at Resolution Copper in Arizona as well, which is a joint venture that Rio has with BHP, and various other projects within Rio. And before joining in about 2014, the junior sector I was hired by a gentleman who's now a board member of ours, Matt Lennox King. He was the CEO of Pilot Gold at the time, and we had projects in Turkey and in Nevada. And he had just come off of a big win with Frontier Gold, where they sold Long Canyon to Newmont. And then they spun out Pilot Gold with the remaining assets in Frontier. And so I joined Matt. Matt brought me on as VP of Project Development at that time. So I've been with several different juniors since then. And most recently, I was with on the casino project in the Yukon, and we were in the boring, expensive phase of permitting, which investors typically will hold off until you get to a construction decision. And so we were looking for a secondary asset that might generate some excitement to shareholders during that boring phase. And I looked at a lot of things, and I did not see anything I liked that made sense for a company like Western Copper and Gold that shareholders wouldn't look at and kind of, tilt their head and go, "What are you doing? Why does this make sense for, to be coupled in the portfolio with the casino project, which is an excellent project. It's a great asset." And so I came across Intrepid's portfolio, which is in an excellent jurisdiction, same commodity, early stage, very undervalued, and an opportunity, which I thought for to add to that portfolio. It didn't happen. We did do a deep dive in it, and we didn't end up moving forward with it. I left Western Copper and Gold and almost immediately joined the board about a year ago now, a little more than a year ago now, of Intrepid Metals, and then just recently took over as CEO in September. So that's a little bit of my background. One of the reasons I jumped on. I told you why I jumped on the board, but one of the reasons I chose to jump on as the CEO was I was down there in March. So I'd already been on the board and down there in March in the middle of the drill program. And our drill program was largely designed to be confirmatory on the 50,000 meters of drill data that we had without any core. So we had to prove up that data, and we did, and then some. And we were down there, and we were hitting, while we were down there, the core that was coming out of the ground were some huge intervals of massive sulfide. And which ultimately ended up being we saw 113 meters of 1.5%, nearly 200 meters, of 0.7% and north of that, so big intervals near surface. And and now we have this consolidated land package that was owned by several different owners previously. And now, we're mining three or we're drilling three different zones that were previously owned separately and trying to bring those together. And that's why the district scale, that's why we're saying this is district scale, is because we are bringing this together. Um, and I think this is what's been a barrier for others just coming into here because it is Arizona. It's a great district, and we're on private lands. We're not in any national forest. We have excellent access to the site with paved roads and dirt roads, and you can access most of the sites with two-wheel drive. Great power infrastructure. There's rail nearby. And Arizona is just a great jurisdiction. 70% of the copper comes in the U.S. comes from Arizona, and so it's a big metal producing state, and there's a large and long history and generations of miners in this region, and so it's not new from a permitting perspective, as was proven recently with a mine near just north of us, Excelsior, which was permitted in 2.5 years. And our chairman, Mark Morabito, was chair of that company, the founder of Excelsior, and chair on that company for 12 years. So we've got an excellent team. We've got an excellent resource that's early stage, and there's so much value to be surfaced that when I was asked to join as CEO, it was one of the first times I'd been with the juniors where I felt like now I have a really what I feel is a great asset, and we need to build it out. But I do feel like the bones are there, and
We'll get
and
to the assets, Ken, later for sure. And I want to talk about each one of them specifically as well as what you
sure.
want to do there. I don't grill any meat before I've done a smell test, though. So this is the first part that we're doing here is the smell test. Insider ownership, as I mentioned, 8.8%. SEDI insider filings say you've recently been buying shares in the open market and you joined the company as a CEO just in September of this year. So just a couple of months, really. You now own 120,000 shares, which is, you buying in the open market essentially. But of course, as an investor, what I'm looking for here is significant skin in the game. What are your
Mhm.
plans for building that skin in the game in Intrepid, and how significant of a portion do you expect this to become in your portfolio?
Well, more and more, it's more that I'm heavily invested in the sector in general, and as well as anybody, this sector is down, and so trying to pull the cash has been a tough call to do that, to pull it from somewhere else at a loss and put it into Intrepid, and so it's more about a liquidity situation for myself personally. If I had the cash, I'd be putting more into it, and but I definitely I definitely am constantly watching the rest of my portfolio for opportunities to pull that cash from and put it more into Intrepid. And at these prices today too, we're at 37 cents. We're like everybody else, a bit of a victim to the market right now. And I would definitely be buying more if the cash was available to me.
The share price, as you mentioned, is actually ticking up to 37 and a half. That half really could be a morale booster, but the share price hasn't done well this year as a whole, or well, it did actually, but
Yeah, we're at 95
essentially
cents.
all those gains have been lost, going from 94 cents in April, 37 cents now, as I mentioned, 37 and a half. That's about a 60% drop. Have you been able, since you came in, to pinpoint the reason for the sell? Like
Yeah.
who's selling? Is it large blocks? What's happening?
Well, yeah, we did a kind of a somewhat of a unique financing with a major shareholder, Leocor. They had basically a situation where they took their entire treasury and handed it over to us and for shares, and instead of investing into their assets in Newfoundland. And so um, we did that at a full warrant, and it was a 45-cent warrant with a 4-month hold. And so when the 4-month hold came off, I think that was somewhere around May. That's when we really started declining. So we were up at 95 cents, and a large part of that climb was the drill results that we were putting out. And then when the hold came off the warrant, people were cashing in.
What's there must be a lesson in that. What's the lesson? Because essentially, this what comes down to is that this created a whole bunch of supply of paper, essentially, which maybe was not as expected. What's the lesson here that again you as a new CEO can apply to this not happening again?
Well, there's not a lot of sources of capital out there, and so it was if when one of those situations you've heard people say, if the money's there, take it, and we needed to get the drills going, and there aren't a lot of deals happening right now. Aren't a lot of financings happening, and quite frankly, the the market has been really tough in raising capital in North America. So, it was a necessary evil, I guess I'd have to say, in order to get the money that we needed and to do that maiden confirmatory drill program that certainly served its purpose and generated a lot of interest. And now we've got to do another one, and we've got to get in and we're looking to do some infill and step out, and then also some greenfield exploration because we've got some new targets identified.
Yes, and that is, I suppose you're talking about the Corral Copper, where you want to do kind of a 70-30 split on infill versus step out. We'll get to that for sure. I also see you're
So,
involved in a few other companies, though, as a director. You're no longer an officer of the Western Copper and Gold, I believe.
yeah, no, no,
Um,
I'm not.
what percentage of your time would you say goes to Intrepid now, though?
100%. Yep,
Okay.
absolutely 100%. And that's why I took over CEO. We had previously Ken Brophy was our CEO, and he was he's credited with doing the hard yards of consolidating this land package into what it is now.
Hmm.
And in the first 18 months, Ken was given he was available half time. He has another venture with the Lundin Group, and so the board thought it was time now with this drill program, the way it went, and the phase that we're moving into the next drill program, that we have a full-time CEO.
Right. Okay. Do you own any private businesses that are currently providing services, I mean, marketing, drilling, helicopter, camp, whatever, anything like that to
No,
Intrepid?
no, I don't.
Since you joined the company, just joined the company in September, I don't expect this to be the case, but do you personally own any royalties or claims over any of the projects?
No, no. I'm a director on another company called Silver One,
Yep.
and they've got projects in Nevada and Arizona as well, and I have been for about 3, maybe 4 years now, and I'm also a director on a new co that's going to go public here soon. So
Okay. When I ask about the royalties, I'm thinking about specifically personally to your own name, any within your family. But what
no,
about the other officers or director? Any of their close family own any royalties in the projects?
no, not that I'm aware of.
Okay. There are royalties on the projects, though, as far as I understand it.
Yeah,
Okay.
correct.
Owned by previous operators or who owns them?
Previous owners and yeah, previous owners as part of either the acquisition, the previous acquisitions.
Hmm. Well, talking about the projects and that historic drilling that you said, 50,000 meters, have those projects, well, they have, but how have they been in public companies before? And maybe here you can provide kind of a brief history of the work that's been done on each one of them.
Okay. The history part I'm not up on it as much as Ken Brophy is and everything, and I'm learning from him as we go here, and then we transition. We've acquired, we've got the three zones. We've got this whole tombstone theme, kind of like you've got the barbecue theme. We've got the tombstone theme, which is we have the three main zones, which is Holiday, Earp, and Ringo. And then obviously under the name Corral Copper, like the OK Corral. But Ken Brophy likes to say that, and he's right. He says we call it Corral because we corralled all the property into a single district.
Hmm.
And yeah, so we've got earn-in obligations with the previous or the vendors that we acquired these from, and one of them's I have a meeting with later on today, MMO, and Bear Creek. and Cave Creek, some names like that. And so I really don't know the history as well as Ken does and everything, but yeah, so
But so
not
where I'm
sure.
going with this is kind of thinking along the lines of how come you've got them in the first place? I mean, if they're as good as you expect them to be, they're well known, they have been looked at before, 50,000 meters of drilling on one of them at least. Why did nobody else think to corral them before you did?
That's a good question. I think there's been historical mining in here since the early or late 1800s, early 1900s. There's been companies that have done drilling in the area, like Santa Fe Pacific before it became part of Newmont. Um, Anglo American, Freeport's got some property right adjacent to us. There's been a lot of exploration in there, and there has been a fragmented land package with not very friendly neighbors. There was a lot of feuding and commercial disputes that were going on, and that's part of the reason why the core doesn't exist anymore. If it was sitting on someone else's property and it wasn't their core, they just mowed it down, literally ran it over with a dozer or something. So there's core out in some of these fields that's just crushed, and I think that was a challenge for some people, and they just had other priorities. And instead of going down this road of, it's not easy trying to develop these relationships over time and then acquiring these assets from, exploration entities, and then also from, personal individuals who just have property. They just have the property and they're not there doing exploration. It's just that the property's been in their family for many years, and now they're looking to divest and fill up. Some of them have trusts and the big land packages and everything, and so they're looking to sell off their properties and just fill up the trusts and distribute to the trust holders.
That's maybe we can touch upon that later on when we talk about how you're going to finance this thing, because I'm also wondering, large companies, why aren't they already on this? But I'll leave that for dessert if we have time for dessert on the barbecue. But this is kind of my smell test that I've gone through, which means we can continue to the sizzle test, which is all about you helping me better understand the business case for Intrepid and what it is that you're trying to achieve in Arizona. Again, 3 projects. Are you many ways that you can take this hub and spoke? You looking to kind of find something, sell it, and then explore the other thing? What is kind of the business thinking here?
I think that we're looking to sell this for sure. I'd like to surface as much value on it as possible before that happens. But I mentioned it in the beginning of this call. We've got a lot of interest. So we've been having interest since uh, over a year ago on getting into our data room and signing confidentiality agreements by major mining companies. And we've purposely held them out because we're not ready and it's too early. Like you said, we're $17 million market cap. We're small, and we need to get that before we start doing, talking strategic partnerships and deals and everything. We got to get some more drilling done and show people what we have. And already that first drill program has generated a lot of interest at the previous conferences I've been to. I got a lot of people coming in that were aware of that saw the press release, and then I had meetings with other people that hadn't seen it, weren't aware of it, and then I had follow-up meetings as a result of those, as
Hmm.
a result of that awareness. And some of that happened in Zurich when I was there, where I met you.
Yep.
And so yeah, so I think we brought on Matt Lennox King to the board, and one of Matt's first duties as a board member is he accepted to be the chair of a strategic financing and partnership committee that we set up, so that we can now start accepting CAs and negotiating CAs with some of the majors that have shown us some interest. But we're doing it in a controlled fashion, and not just so that it's not just me or not just Mark Morbido, going forward with their own individual vision. We're looking at this in a committee format and assessing what each of these potential partners can bring to us. And so I've currently signed 2 CAs with majors, and I'm negotiating 3 more. And so it's happening fast. And
Interesting.
and and as a result, I mean, there's also, you should be aware too that um, our property boundaries on the eastern border, we have one of the major mining companies has staked a whole bunch of ground immediately adjacent to our eastern border. And there's been some staking by others immediately to our southwestern border. So I want to say the vultures are circling, but the there's a lot of interest in us right now, and that's why we formed this committee, so that we can manage this in a wise, a very smart way.
Hmm. W- We'll again. I hope we can touch upon those CAs that you've signed and kind of the goal there. Whether you're looking for an asset or an equity level deal, that's something I hope we can touch upon later on. And part of the story that you told me in Zurich when we met was the drill program that you have coming up at Corral Copper. That's one of the projects you've scheduled it for Q1 of this year, if I remember correctly. You'll be targeting CRD and porphyry mineralization there. That's the thing that attracted kind of my attention to the story. Assuming with some deeper holes. But what is the specific goal of this program? What's the main unanswered question, if you will, that you think the drill bit will answer for you?
Um, I think a lot of things. I think it's going to generate a lot of excitement first of all, but we've actually, I like to call it a work program. We're doing a drill program. That's the majority of the spend, right? But the work program also includes geophysics, sampling, and mapping, and those are all important aspects of to understanding the geological model and the resource in the ground and where to find it. So we've done some excellent work on both geophysics and mapping, and recently we started just last week when we were there, we kicked off the next round of that. Some more mapping and some more sampling. And it's a lower cost work, but we can afford that right now. And so I wanted to get that done or get that started because that's good information that helps further inform our our drill our drill program so that we can do the drill program in the most effective way possible. So we've got lined out this ground can soak up lots of drilling. We got lots of area. We've got 9,600 acres. We're on private ground and we're on about 15% of the property right now. That's it. So we've got a lot of property here to explore further that hasn't been previously explored. We did a gravity survey last summer as a suggestion by actually our chairman, because something that he had seen done in a previous company that he had, and which showed great results. And again, it was pretty glaring in identifying a new target for us. We call it Target 3.
Hmm.
It's about a kilometer east of our Ringo zone, and it's in that gravity survey is lighting up like a Roman candle. So it's really hot, and that's definitely an area. We were just over there with Matt Lennox King last week, along with the others who we recently signed a CA with, and they saw that target, and the alteration is crazy. It's just the way they put it is there's no free rock anywhere. Everything's altered. You can't find any free rock. So just plain rock. So unaltered rock is not is impossible to find in our tenure. So
How many meters do you want to drill in Q1?
so we've lined out as much as 16,000 meters.
Okay.
Um, like I said, the property can soak up a lot more than that, but we're trying to be realistic. So we laid out a program of 16,000 meters, prioritized by probability of success. 70% of that is infill and step out drilling near known mineralization. And then about 30% of it's going to be into new targets. We've identified as many as 12 new targets, but specifically we're highlighting one that's really close by that could be part of this whole system. And something about this fragmented land package that's interesting too is because it's fragmented. Some previous operators were looking for copper and they weren't assaying for gold, and vice versa. Some were looking for gold and we're assaying for copper. And And so pulling this all together, nobody ever really looked for the porphyry source. So it's never been found. So it's still out there.
When
So
do you think that's going to be completed, the 16,000 meters?
I think we can complete that later in the year, like more in the fall, Q3, depending on financing or depending on how much we raise in maybe partnership, or we're still looking at different opportunities for that.
Right. Definitely want to talk about financing.
Yeah.
What do you what do you think is a threshold for something like this to be economic in Arizona, though, or at least of economic interest to someone buying it off your hands down the road, which is, again, as far as I understand it, is kind of your goal here. And I'm specifically asking about grade and tonnage here. What's the more specific, not you can't really call it goal because these things are often unpredictable, but what is your gut feeling essentially?
Oh, I don't know, because it's a copper porphyry system, right? Or we're looking for a copper porphyry system right now. It's CRD skarn, kind of what we're seeing, near surface, high grade. I've seen some press releases for underground base metal operations in copper, not too long ago or just recently, and they're showing grades that we're showing at surface. So, 1.5% copper is excellent. It's well above what a cutoff would be in a financial model. And it's like I said, it's at surface. We're a few meters below the surface and outcropping in some areas. So strip ratio is going to be small. But as far as tons, I'm not there yet. We're not there yet. I want to see where this next drill program goes, and I think we'll have a better understanding of scale of what we have here,
Yeah.
and then we can start arm waving more at those kind of things.
Well, I'm not asking you to guess how big this thing is going to get or what grade, essentially. I'm thinking about how big do you think it has to get in order for you to attract someone taking it off your hands in that part of the world?
Quite frankly, with the interest that we're getting right now, I don't think it has to get much. Nothing, not much more has to change. So I think we have some serious interest already, and I want to be careful not to divulge any of that or um, violate any of the confidentiality agreements. But I think our biggest concern is holding on to this long enough for it to increase in value like our current shareholders would like to see.
Do you think grade variability might be a challenge here, though? Because during your phase one drill program, you reported multiple intercepts of over 100 meters, um, 200 meters almost on one occasion of different grades, from kind of going from 0.5% copper with a third of a gram of gold all the way up to 1.5% copper at 0.5 gram of gold. But the very, very high grade stuff, like 20%, over 20% of copper and 8.5 grams of gold in one intercept, that's really concentrated in, again, narrow intercepts. In that specific
Yeah.
case, it was less than 1.5 meters. So how much of a challenge
Yeah.
do you think grade and width variability will be for your thesis?
It could be. Yeah. I mean, like I said, there's alteration everywhere. There's many different forms of mineralization. You see, bright uh, copper, the patina color, the green, you see that everywhere. You see the blue, you see like things that look like bornite, but they're not. But there's tons of different copper forms of copper mineralization. I think metallurgy could be challenging. Recoveries on metallurgy could be challenging. I don't know that right now in the CRD and the skarn areas that we've identified and we've drilled so far without finding the porphyry, I think the grade variability could be challenging. But we're not going to worry about that right now. We're gonna get ourselves into a situation where you know, we hopefully can find that porphyry source and build the tons on this. Because a long time ago, somebody shared this with me early on in my career, was that in the base metals, tons rule, and in the uh, in the precious metals like gold, grade rules. Grade's the king. So so anyway, I kind of seen that. I worked in copper most of my career with companies like Kennecott or Rio Tinto, and then also at Nevsun at the Timok project in Serbia. So So yeah, I'm optimistic that we have the opportunity here to build out something that's a significant scale that the majors are going to be looking at, which is large, long life deposits.
70% of that drilling, 70% of 16,000 is 11,000 rounded down. 11,000
Yeah,
meters is infill drilling. How many holes? How deep do you think you have to go?
it'd probably be. I don't think we have to go that deep. I think what we're seeing is we're still testing this, but I think what we're seeing is that the in this area of Arizona that the geology the folds are kind of like going like this. So if you're looking for the porphyry, it's not necessarily at depth because depth might just be horizontally. Does that make
Sure.
sense?
Sure.
And that's kind of what our geos are testing right
Like
now.
a building laying down on its side,
Yeah,
essentially.
exactly. So if that's the case, we don't need to go deep.
Hmm.
We just need to go sideways.
How is the potential for a porphyry at Corral Copper has never been targeted before, which sounds curious to me, particularly because of its proximity to Bisbee, right? So why has a thesis as dare I say as obvious as another copper porphyry next to Bisbee being overlooked by the various operators on this land package, especially if it is like you're kind of describing it as a building laying on its side?
Well, I think it was largely because they weren't looking for it. It was largely because of the fragmented land package, and they had awesome grades of CRD deposits at surface, and that's what they were looking at. I mean, you bring up Bisbee, the Copper Queen, which was owned by Phelps Dodge, owned and operated by Phelps Dodge. I think they started out at 53 million tons at 6%, and then found the porphyry while they were targeting or while they were mining that 53 million tons, which, by the way, is tonnage wise is about close to the size and the footprint of our Ringo zone alone. And and then when they hit the porphyry, they mined it for like another 60 years or something like that.
Mhm. Yeah.
So that's and these and th those are our geos went down. We went down to the Copper Queen site to compare and take a look at the main host rocks and to see how they compared to ours. And you can't tell the difference. It's the same Abrigo. We call it the Abrigo limestone. And we've just scratched the surface on the Abrigo limestone is prevalent through across our entire area through outside of these three zones. And we've got a lot more drilling to before we get to the edges of that Abrigo.
How many holes? No, how many drills are you going to be turning on that drilling?
It depends. I think I'd like to get potentially two drills going. But I also,
One on
we
the
haven't
step
talked about
out,
it yet.
one on the infill.
Yeah,
Okay.
right.
Yeah.
And then I'd also like to get one down. We haven't talked about it, but our Tombstone South project,
I want
which
to
is
talk about that too. Yeah, for sure.
yeah, yeah. So I want to see if we can get. We need to get some deep holes into that one, and so that's going to be a different drill contractor.
Yeah, I understand. I was just thinking about the 16,000 meters is specifically why I'm asking about how many drills and how quickly you're going to drill those meters is because I'm thinking of news flow. You start drilling in Q1. Also, talk to me. What is, I mean, Q1 is a long period. It's 3 months. Do you have a month in mind? And when are the first assay results going to start coming in?
As soon as we can bring money or fill up the treasury, we can start drilling within a week. We don't need permits. It's on private land. We just notify the county that we're drilling. And that's essentially what we did earlier this year. In January, we finished the financing, and in February, the drills were turning, and by the beginning of June, we were done.
Hmm.
And that was about 5,000 meters with
Okay.
one drill.
Right, right. Again, I'm keeping the financing as dessert. So I do definitely, I've written it down 3 times next to each other. So I do want to talk about it. But I also want to talk about Tombstone South. And I know we're kind of moving quickly, but there's a lot to go through. Maybe we can do separate, more in-depth conversations on each project as results start rolling in. But so Tombstone, as far as I understand it, you want to drill in the second half of next year. So the immediate future for the project would be what target generation, I suppose.
No, we have the targets. We have the drill permits, and we're ready to go. We did a large um, dipole IP survey last year, and it highlighted an anomaly in a location that is very analogous to the Taylor Deeps deposit at Hermosa, which is just about 70 kilometers to the west of us. So geologically speaking, it's right next door.
Hmm.
Um, and and so this the our team is pretty excited to get these holes in there. We do have some work we owe as part of the earn-in for this deal. So we will be putting in a couple of deep holes in, and when you say H2, it's I would like to bring that up earlier. If we have the money, I'll do that right away. And we'll bring in a separate drill contractor that's got good success with doing deep holes because we don't want to get into there and start a hole and not quite get all the way down there because that's the problem with not problem, but that's the situation with Tombstone is previously BHP and others didn't drill very deep before they left, and this anomaly is sitting down there. There's mineralization all the way to depth, but it's lighting up like crazy down at starting at around 600 meters down to over 1,000 meters.
Mhm.
So we want to get a couple of 1,000 meter holes in. That's not cheap. They're $500,000 holes. And if we're going to do it, we want to be successful, but we feel pretty confident in that one. I'd say as exciting as Corral is internally and how much work we've done on it, and we're continuing to do work on it, and our geological team is second to none that I've ever worked with. Um, we've There's a lot of excitement to get moving forward on target 3 at Corral, but I'd say there's almost an equal amount of excitement to get some deep holes into that anomaly at Tombstone South.
The comparison to Taylor is therefore interesting to me because you don't have those deep holes. So theirs is much deeper than what you know about your project. So what gives you the confidence in that comparison specifically?
Well, they're both situated proximal to a low-grade porphyry, which is provides the heat source for fluid flow, and then adjacent to a major fault zone. And then the mineralization at Taylor Deeps occurs very much in the same way that this anomaly is highlighting. In that this anomaly is right next to a fault zone, and then we're hoping to see the mineralization. There's two layers of limestone, of different age limestone, which is where the Taylor Deeps deposit has mineralized. Is at that inflection point between those two limestone units, and um, and that's exactly where we're seeing this light up on the IP survey that we did. So it's, we've got to the northwest, we've got a low grade uneconomic porphyry system, and on the other side of the fault zone is our anomaly.
Hmm. I think this also explains part of it being part of the complexity, if you will, of the land package. Because in Taylor itself was not discovered on the first hole, the second hole. I don't think it was even discovered on the first or the second drill program, if I remember correctly. But it's just not as easy. How much drilling do you think it could take you to vector in on the right spot? Like what are you budgeting, and how probable do you think it is that the first drill program already gives you the answers you want?
Um, I'd say I've asked the same question to our team, and we got a couple of really conservative PhD geologists that don't like to be promotional at all and are very careful about their reputation and sharing anything that's going to be the anything that's going to be in danger of being used by me or others to promote. So they're real careful not to share that stuff with me. But these guys are saying to them, there's nothing else that explains this anomaly. We've all been burned by anomalies before by drilling down into it and then getting nothing, getting a duster. I really feel confident that this is not going to be the case with this one because there's already been mineralization above it that's been drilled, and we just want to get down to the depth and really find the higher grade material and everything. So I we're going to start with 2 holes and see how we're doing, and but plan for the potential to maybe do 2 more. So like I said, that's $2 million worth of drilling right there,
Mm.
4 holes. So we want to make sure um we want to hit. You know, we'll do that probably at the same time as we're drilling Corral.
Oh, at the same time, yeah, because you said
I
Corral
know.
drilling is going to go into Q3, and
Yep.
again, in the sake of time, we should talk about Tombstone again when results start rolling in. But when do you think that is? I mean, you said you want drilling officially. Your goal is to drill it in H2, so starting in Q3. But you think it's reasonable to expect results in Q3 of 2025, where you kind of have results rolling in for both Corral and Tombstone at the same time.
Um, yeah, I mean it's been a little bit of a revision there. Yeah, we just want to. I think it's going to be beneficial to us to drill Tombstone at the same time as Corral for you know optic reasons. You know, it's we're optimistic that we are going to hit something and we're going to see something really interesting and exciting. But at the same time, maybe if we don't hit it at the first hole, the first two holes, and we have to step back and get some more money in order to get some more holes in it, um, you know, we will share that information publicly, but maybe that's overshadowed a bit by what we're doing at Corral.
Mhm.
So
That that is something that I have a question about that. I'll get to it later as well. But then that's Corral, Tombstone. You also have Mesa Well,
Mesa
um,
Well, yeah.
mapping, sampling, some geophysics. That's what you're doing there, as far as I understand it. Kind of target generation. What's your goal? When do you want to have some targets there?
Uh, I'd say that's definitely priority three. We do need to do some work on that, and I'd say that's our opportunity to maybe do to monetize. That's our project that we could maybe monetize and maybe generate some more money for Corral and Tombstone. Or if we want to get, I'd really rather just get in there no sooner than later and start doing some of that mapping and sampling. I think that's what we'll probably get going in this summer. And and see where that takes us. We know the trending mineralization is moving to the northwest, and it's an incredible location it's in elephant country, and also just like all three of our projects, or the other two projects, it doesn't sit in national forests. It's on it's drill permit ready as well. So we will probably just be looking at target generation this year with the hopes of doing some drilling next year.
Okay, good. So maybe kind of
This year being
summarize.
2025. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, that'd be interesting if you could have targets in the next 20 days. That would also be interesting, though. Welcomed. To summarize it, drilling star of the show really for Intrepid in 2025 is 16 kilometers being drilled in Q1 and Corral
Mhm.
Copper 11K infill, 5K step out results throughout Q3. Then you have Tombstone drilling in H1. Officially, that's what your goal is. You hope to maybe even have it drilling sooner.
Mhm.
You have the targets there already. You know what you want to go and do. So hoping for results by Q3 at the latest, early Q4. And then Mesa Well, target generation in 2025, surface work, some geophysics and whatnot, but no drilling in 2025, potentially drilling in 2026, though. Am I getting that right? That's kind of the summary.
Yep. Yep.
Okay. Why, though? I mean, why three projects in the first place? You say you like Corral. You have historic drill results on it. You're thinking about, you've got big aspirations for it. Why do you need the other two projects? Why not spin them out, option them out, sell them, do something else so that you can finance that 16,000 meters at Corral?
Because we still have work that we have to do on them, and we haven't done much on them on Tombstone South and Mesa Well. So we have to understand what we have there before we're ready to discuss any kind of uh, any kind of deals. And we have had interested parties in Mesa Well. We've been having casual conversations with, but we're not quite ready ourselves to do that. We did the initial raise at $2 million in May of 22, and the first financing basically $6 million or 6.6 in January of this year. So it's still pretty early days for us, before we can understand what we have in our portfolio, the value of what we have in our portfolio.
And at that point is when you start thinking about potentially doing something else with them. So what essentially in 2026, is that really the goal? And I'm still thinking about kind of the business strategy here. Would the goal be that in 2026 you're only working on one project?
I don't know if that's the goal. I think, we definitely have had discussions about, it is a game changer when the we drill into Tombstone South and we get something exciting, right? That's a good potential spin out. And I'd be in favor of doing something like that. So investors know that when they're investing on us, they're focusing on, they're focusing on Corral, or we're focusing on Corral. So when they're investing in us, that money's going into Corral, and we're going to develop Corral. And when they're investing in Tombstone, they know they're getting value out of that as well. So so that's my thinking on it. I think it differs. It probably differs from others, but you know, I've been with single asset companies and multiple asset companies, and I know there's a lot of different views on multiple assets. I think Frank Juster was talking about, just the opposite, saying you can't, single asset companies don't go anywhere. And I don't necessarily agree with that because I've been with both, and of course he has been with many. And it's the reality is like on casino, for instance, Western Copper and Gold, people were investing in the casino project, not the management. They weren't investing in what the value of the management was bringing to it. That's a really good ore body, and in a great jurisdiction and everything. And so I think when people are, that's why I was concerned about what assets we were looking at for a secondary asset at Western Copper and Gold. It had to be something that investors who bought shares of Western Copper and Gold for the casino project weren't going to get upset with bringing a gold project in, middle of South America or something,
Mm. An interesting point. I ran a poll on Twitter this week. It's almost 1,000 people tuned in to answer it, and 63. I asked what matters more, and 63% said management matters more. I think the answer is really a geologist answer, but it depends. In some situations, management matters more. In some situations, geology. Most of the situations, it's a combination. But you bring up an interesting point, nonetheless. How much is all that work that you want to do here going to cost you, though? I mean, you're talking about $2 million at Tombstone alone, 16,000 meters at Corral, a little bit of groundwork. So I don't expect it's going to be too expensive to do the geophysics and the groundwork at
in,
Mesa Well combined.
in
What's your budget?
big round numbers, we're probably looking 10 to $12 million, for all of this, which is
Right.
a significant ask for our market cap,
Correct. Um,
which is probably going to come in the, you know, money coming in is probably going to come in different ways. We have 19 million warrants out right now at 45 cents.
mhm.
If we can bring down those warrants, that brings in a lot.
There are also option payments that will happen throughout the year. What's the cadence of those? How much money do you need for that? Or maybe just walk me through the entire option agreement just so we're clear on it.
I don't have those off the top of my head, Antonio. You might even be, if you prepared for this, you probably sounds like you might have read into it more. I know we've just paid out a option payment of about 100,000 to MMO on Corral just past week. We've got I believe another 500,000 to do at least at Tombstone by Q2 at least, or maybe sooner. But other than that, off the top of my head, I can't recall the exact numbers.
But there's again, I think you can round it up maybe to about $1 million that you'd need to have room for that in
Mhm.
next year. And then G&A, as I mentioned in the overview, the cash component, an average of 140 a month, uh,
Mhm.
put you rounded up to $2 million for the year. Is that what you're targeting for G&A? Do you think it's going to go up? It's going to go down? Because 16,000 meters, I assume you're going to need more personnel or not. Talk to
Yep.
me about G&A.
Yeah, it's going to go. It will. There's a chance it'll go up, right? It's going to be more like between 150 and 200,000. One of the things we have a largely consultant based geological team. It's really good. We've got a company that we partnered with called Vector Exploration with Dan McNeil and Alan Wainwright, who are excellent. And they've been our primary geos on the project, as well as Resource Geosciences with Matt Gray. He's got a PhD. He's got an office in Hermosillo, Mexico, and he's got an excellent team of geologists that support us through that office. And then we got Chris Osterman, who's also PhD geo, and he supports us as well. And so we've got no shortage of expertise, and now bringing Matt Lennox King on the team as well. So it's really good. But we really need to bring in a full-time VPX that's managing all of this, managing these consultants and using these consultants in a more effective and efficient way than I can focus on while I'm on the road marketing and doing other things, right? So I'm in the process of looking for that person right now.
Essentially, though, 12 million for exploration, and I'm rounding up, taking maybe a little bit of a margin here. 12 million for exploration. You're saying 200 grand a month G&A is 2.5 for the year. A million in options. We're over 15 million bucks, and you have about 2 million in cash, but the 15 is already essentially your market cap, right? I mean, it's close
Yeah.
to your market cap is 17 and a half, 18 right now. Talk to me about that. I mean, you mentioned the CAs a couple of times. Now we've come close to talking about the dessert. What does that look like? Are you thinking an asset level deal that can get that much cash in? Or are you thinking someone taking I don't know, a 50% chunk of a company, or what are you thinking?
I'm looking at more of a 19.9, but then other sources of revenue as well. Um, you know, I this is really more Mark Morabito's territory. He's raised over $1 billion in capital for mines since he's been doing this. He's been really super successful. And so when I'm sharing this stuff with you now, it's not coming out of the top of my head. It's coming out of many discussions I've had with Mark and strategies with Mark and Matt.
Yeah. Okay. So it's part of it is still going to have to be equity, though. Do you
Yep.
have a target in mind where you're like, okay, if we need to raise 15 million bucks here sometime in the near future, do you do public market equity as well? And when do you do it? Kind of a little bit more details around how you're thinking about the financing.
Mm. Uh, yeah, it's difficult to talk about right now. It's because we haven't started talking with anybody, but we are starting to let people in the data room. And I don't want to give people the wrong perception of where we're heading here because I think everything's on the table. We're looking at all kinds of different things. Like I mentioned, we've got 19 million warrants at 45 cents that are out there. If we can get those pulled down, um, that can bring in considerable amount. We also have, I believe, with all this interest at the majors, like I said, 5 CAs here, we're negotiating. I think that leads to a high potential for strategic partnership. And at what level, I'm not sure yet. But also, there's been some recent interest by some of the investment firms as well as a result of some of the staking that's being done around us and the discussions we've had and their awareness of the interest in us. I
Well,
know it's
talking about
vague.
the investment firms, I believe, and I mentioned at the beginning that about 60% of the companies owned by institutions and high net worth individuals. Part of that, if I remember, is Crescat Capital. They've been vocal about you. They were vocal about you.
Mhm.
Not so much anymore. Are they still in, or have you talked?
They are. They had some redemptions, I guess, and so they needed to liquidate. So they sold some of our shares off. And they're still a major shareholder. They've got a group there with with Quentin and they've put a lot of focus on another project, Barksdale nearby.
Yep.
And so that's where they had to kind of invest. And so they made a small shift there, but they're still very interested. They still keep in touch and they're active and everything. So um, yeah, so nothing weird going on there. Just more management of their business.
Hmm. But when you talk to them, is there are they a motivated buyer or them a motivated seller? Do they want to hold? What are they kind of telling you about their strategy with the shake? It's just important for me where I'm coming from with this. It's important for me to understand the supply demand dynamic of the equities. Like, are they going to be on the supply side or on the demand side?
Yeah, they're definitely a holder and but also have indicated an interest to come back in and buy more down the road here. So
Okay.
definitely.
How are you generally thinking about constructing the share registry here? You've entered as a new CEO, probably have some ideas. This is also where you talk to me about the marketing. You mentioned a couple of times that you want to be out there marketing, doing conferences and whatnot. Who do you want to have in this story? And what kind of a breakdown are you hoping for? Do you want to keep it 60% institutional, 30% retail? How do you see all that?
We'd like to get the retail buying up for sure, like everybody would, right? I think it's difficult to do that in this market in this exchange right now. We have had discussions about a ASX listing and the exposure to the ASX because I do feel like that market is a bit more robust on the retail side. So we have had opportunities too to do that. I know there's certain institutions that have an ASX base now, like Canaccord, I believe, has one, and but then we've had some interest with some groups that already have ASX exposure, and doing some kind of partnership with them would give us that exposure as well. We haven't had those discussions haven't gone very far yet, though. They're just initial kind of exploratory discussions.
Right. Because that's a cost too, right? I mean, getting a dual
Yeah, it is.
listing or even just switching exchange is not cheap anyways. So, um, yeah, but I know you almost have to go. Maybe don't have too much time to get into that. What else though? I've already taken more than an hour of your time. What else did you come here hoping to talk about that I'm failing to bring up?
Um, yeah, I don't know. I guess the message I always want to get through here is, I know you're excellent with those questions. I mean, I really appreciate how much prep you must have put into this because you're asking me a lot of questions. I just don't know how to give you a good answer, and I'm still got my training wheels on for CEO training wheels on. And so I want to be really careful about what I share because it is a publicly traded company, and I don't want to give. Early on, I made some comments on an interview, and I didn't realize the effect of them, and it wasn't a big deal, but it was a learning point for me, a learning experience. So I appreciate your patience with my vague answers, but anyway, I really want everybody to understand is. Um, we're doing everything we can to surface the value of this thing, of this asset, Corral specifically. I would not I was ready to step out of the juniors after Western Copper and Gold and get back into something different. I was talking to one of the major EPCM firms in the world about a senior level position, and that could have been a nice, very interesting and comfortable job through retirement.
Mhm.
Um, but when I was down in Arizona during that drill program uh, earlier this spring, and I saw what was coming out of the ground, and I learned a little, and I got my boots on the ground, and I saw what was out there, and I made the connection in my brain of how Ken Brophy pulled all this together and consolidated this land package. Um, I was like, whoa. This is the first time I've been in the juniors, and I've been in the juniors for 10 years, and most of that 10 years has been a down cycle. And so I've the steam's coming out of me and I'm losing some steam in the sector, but or I was until I saw this program, and then Mark offered me this opportunity, which I've rarely had a really good team and a really good asset. I've either had a really good asset and a so-so team, and I've had a great team. And First Mining Gold, we had an excellent team at First Mining Gold. They still do, and some really good assets and everything. But not a nothing that knocked it out of the park. I think they have something now, but nothing that knocked it out of the park like I feel like Corral is going to anyway. And so now it's my opportunity. I got a position on the board as well. CEO. It's in my hands, and we're building out a great team, starting with Matt Lennox King, bringing him on board. We'll be making some more changes. We'll be bringing a VPX on board, and we're going to continue to surface the value on this project and grow it. And I think it's the first time in the juniors that I've been in there that I've seen this level of interest and excitement. And that's been confirmed by Mark as well. In the many years he's been doing this, he hasn't seen this much interest in one of his assets or one of his portfolios. And Matt commented yesterday in a meeting we were having with some future investors was that he hasn't seen this level of interest since they sold Long Canyon to Newmont.
Mhm.
So so anyway, I can't provide all the answers that everybody might want to have in so specific answers and everything, but I would say I hope you come away with the same excitement that, or you can sense my genuine excitement on this, and know that we are going to be doing everything we can with the money we have to to build out the treasury, build out the team, and build out these assets specifically at Corral.
Well, it sounds like again contingent on financing, and if you make that happen, you're going to have a whole lot to talk about throughout 2025. So maybe again we
Yeah.
can follow it up and have a another conversation more specific to some of these projects. Spend another hour on talking. But again, I understand you have to go now, Ken. Though, so thank you
Yes.
so much for sitting down with me today, and hopefully speak soon.
Yeah. Thank you, Antonio. It was great. I really appreciate it. Thank you.